Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Heart to Heart. This is an IGTV and now newly branded YouTube series started by myself, Dr. Breen Muhammad, and my partner in crime, Dr. Misha Gupta, where we talk to today's physicians about their journeys through medicine, their social media presence, and really just learning about them as people. So today we are so fortunate to have my dear friend, Dr. Aaliya Yaqub. I've known her literally since I think like college. We had like a mutual friend that introduced us, and it's so amazing to see how much she's grown in her career. She initially graduated from UCLA Medical School, and then she went on to Stanford to do her internal medicine residency. And also, I think you did the first dermatology fellowship there as well. And then from there, she went on to become a medical startup founder, angel investor. She's been an advisor to multiple healthcare startups, and she's also a skincare entrepreneur. She has a huge following on social media, specifically on Instagram. You'll know her as Clear Skin Doc on Instagram, as well as TikTok, where she educates, advocates, and helps others that are interested in the field of medicine, as well as wanting to become physician entrepreneurs. Not only that, Aaliya is also a mother of 4. She's a wife, and she's building her dream home. Literally, I don't know how this woman has time, but we are we're so lucky to have her today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. And that made me sound way better than I really am.
I highly doubt that. You have a lot of people that look up to you, and obviously us as well. So, to get started, and we like to ask all of our interviewees this, what was really your journey through medicine, and what led you to not only become an internist, because that was kind of the early part of your career, but really going into and branching out into the medical startup world?
Yeah, so it really wasn't my plan to go into startups or to work in innovation. My dream always was to be a physician, and I didn't know what kind early on. I did a bunch of exploration. I initially thought I wanted to go into facial plastics, and then eventually ended up in internal medicine because I couldn't decide on one particular area to specialize. And thought maybe at some point I'd be a cardiologist, rheumatologist. I went through sort of all the rounds and ended up in residency realizing, hey, I'm at Stanford, I'm in Silicon Valley. There's so much opportunity and innovation here. I started learning about it and started getting really curious and realized that if I didn't do something in this space, I would be kicking myself in 5 to 10 years. And so right after I graduated from fellowship, instead of staying on in academics, which was originally my plan, I decided to explore. And I had a mentor at the time. I was really fortunate, who was the chief medical officer at a big startup. And she said, hey, try this for like a year. If it doesn't work out, you can always go back to academics. And I guess the rest is history, because once I understood what you could build, I really didn't sort of look back. And one interesting thing about my career is I still practice, and I actually was almost full time in a clinical role until about 2.5 years ago, while I was doing all of the startup stuff. So I really maintained sort of the spirit of the clinical side of my practice, and that was really important to me. And then at some point, it was, you kind of had to decide whether you want to go all in into the startups or not. And that was a really hard decision. But so I still do, I maintain my board status, and I maintain all of my sort of experience and try to do shifts here and there, but it's not my day-to-day job anymore.
Yeah, that's so amazing to hear. And obviously, Amisha and I have been big fans of yours for so long. I've known you for so long, and to, like I said before, to really see you grow in your career has been absolutely incredible. And I think one of the things that I really admire is that you're so real on social media, and you really, show this real life depiction of what it's like to be a physician in today's times, a female physician in today's times, right? Like, we're not just boxed into this one, idea as to what a female physician can do, and I think there's very few female physicians on social media that have gotten involved into the startup world and have really advocated for that. And it's amazing to see that, you're doing that, because I feel like you're giving so much inspiration to, younger generations that would want to do the same.
That's super kind of you to say. I think one thing that I've realized on this journey that's so important is prior to sort of this current state that we're in, where there are a lot of physicians on social media, right before this, there were folks who were really scared of sharing things on social media, especially in relationship to their mental health or their personal lives or things that they were going through. And I've always been a big believer in the fact that, the more human you are and the more you show in a professional manner as much as possible, that doesn't conflict with, your clinical practice, the more, people can relate to you, and the more impact you really have. I think people need to realize that physicians are humans too. We're not like some robotic creature that, just exists mythically and doesn't have a real life. And I think that's sort of been the sort of level of gravitas that the medical field has expected of physicians. And I think that's changing. And, you know, especially for female physicians, we take on many different roles in our lives, and it's important to sort of advocate for those of us who are moms. It's important for us to advocate for other women who are, sort of coming up into that part of their lives and maybe struggling and trying to figure out what's this work-life balance like, or what do I do? Do I have to, act like I'm really nerdy and like not show my feminine side because somehow that's going to make me less of a physician or less credible or less good at my job, or maybe I won't get a leadership position. And so I think there's so much happening right now where we have the power to change those stereotypes and break down those barriers and really show that women can be women and we're human, and that doesn't take away from what we bring. So,
Absolutely.
that's I think where we're headed, hopefully. And that's what I would love to show.
No, absolutely. And I think that you're such a great role model for that, and I think, Breen and I, first of all, agree with everything you just said, but I also think that it's so important to share that message with the younger generations because of what we were told when we were in training and how we were told that social media might be detrimental to our careers. And so I recently spoke to some college students, and they were asking me the similar questions about, will they be able to pursue some of their other interests? And you do such a wonderful job kind of showing different aspects of your life, but also helping physicians who do want to step outside just one, definition of what a physician is with entrepreneurship, and especially with healthcare startups, an industry which continues to expand and which really is the next generation of medical and clinical care. I think it's really interesting to students and trainees and current physicians to learn more about that. And so, what would be your advice for individuals who do have those interests, and where should they start?
Yeah, it's actually really funny that you mentioned that, because one of my passions and something that I'm working on right now is bringing a course to medical students and residents so that they can interface with startups and they can learn about innovation and they can see what entrepreneurs need. I mean, they need medical experts. They need folks who have been in the hospital and in the clinic, who know what patients are going through, what physicians are going through, what our pain points are, in order to build technology and services that are going to change healthcare. So I think physicians are going to play a really large role in that, hopefully. And sort of up until this point, it's been kind of nebulous and like kind of unclear, like how do you approach this part of innovation? When I was in training, it was literally like your options were academic medicine, private practice, and industry. And I didn't really know what does industry mean. And that was like, the pharmaceutical companies, biotech, but startups are actually in a kind of a different space than those companies, in the sense that you have often, these solo or, entrepreneurs, like two or three of them, who are working on solving a problem. Oftentimes they're not from the healthcare space. They're literally just smart people trying to solve a problem. And in my experience, they oversimplify sort of the solution. They're like, hey, here's a problem in healthcare. Seems like the solution is super easy. When you don't have a physician in the mix, that's where a lot of things go wrong, in terms of you might have a solution that's not really ethically sound, or you may have a solution that's not really going to be practical or actually work out and take into consideration things that you really need to look at. And so that's where we can be really helpful. And that's where my sort of experience has been really helpful to companies that I work with. And in terms of answering your actual question, though, about how to get exposure to this, I think medical schools are wisening up to the fact that students are interested in this and hopefully are providing more resources. But for folks who are interested, they can always reach out to incubators like Y Combinator, or a lot of academic institutions have accelerators or incubators that, and for those of folks who don't know what that is, it's basically like an organization that allows startups to, it's like kind of like a startup school. So they incubate startups, really, really early stage companies that are often just an idea, and they help these founders kind of figure out, how do you get funding? How do you, actually turn your idea into a real business, and how do you actually launch that business? And so if you interface with founders at that super early stage, you can offer your expertise, for free. You can consult for them. You can become an advisor. There are many different options in terms of how to work with them. But as you start getting more and more exposure, then your options are sort of, open up wider and wider. But so many of us kind of just stumbled our way into this path, I will say, just by being super curious and saying, I want to be part of this. I don't know how. And I'm just going to meet as many people as possible who are working on cool things and try to convince them to work with me in some capacity.
Right. Well, and I think it's like, it reaches like a broader idea of that, as physicians, we have so much more to offer in so many different spaces, in business, in technology, in so many different things. And we've been restricting ourselves, and maybe the culture has been that way. And now it's breaking through. And we can have seats at multiple tables, and there's nothing wrong with being in business and being a clinician. And I think that, the idea and the paradigm is changing, and it's changing for the better because of those concepts, and for people like you who are educating and helping to bring others to the future. But I think it's great, and I really do think that the interest is so strong in our students and trainees right now. So I can't wait to see what the future holds.
Yeah. If Stanford Medical School is any sort of indicator of the interest of students in innovation, I will say that a significant percentage of them actually opt to not go into residency and actually go into physician leadership in innovation. And so it's actually a very interesting phenomenon. And then I'll say that several of my co-residents when I was at Stanford ended up starting really interesting companies that are doing super well. And so there is definitely precedent for physicians thriving and doing well and being leaders, and actually, if they want to change, they have the opportunity to change healthcare on a larger scale and be sort of the decision makers and the ones who really come up with the solutions. Because I know a lot of times people feel that way in training. They're like, hey, I see so many pain points and so many issues, and we can solve them. And often there's a lot of bureaucracy. And so the startup route really offers sort of a way to disrupt some of the legacy sort of pain points and problems that we have in healthcare, and really build something from first principles that that really makes sense and can work.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, kind of going on to the next topic, obviously, many of our followers and many of the people that are viewing, our podcast are familiar with you through social media, specifically Instagram and even TikTok. So, you have this great presence. You've been on social media for a while now, even before, like you said, a lot of physicians were even on social media. So how did you get the idea to first start like a public social media account? How were you able to really grow your presence and, really talk about medicine and startups? And what kind of advice would you have to, students, trainees, and even early career physicians that have similar aspirations like yourself to be on social media and utilize it to benefit their own careers?
Yeah. So, like many people, I was on Instagram since the very beginning and had a private account where I would share like pictures of my nachos and, all the like random things that we used to share on Instagram, and like, pictures of, a dinner out and whatnot. And when I was at Forward, and I was sort of a physician to a lot of sort of VIP folks, I started realizing that no matter what your socioeconomic status was, no matter how privileged you were, people just didn't have a really good concept of how to take care of their skin, like on a basic level. And that was something that I had learned, and I'd worked in sort of skincare formulation, and I'd done this fellowship, and was like, oh, I can totally teach people about this. It's really not that hard, and it should be general knowledge. And so I said, what I'm doing in my practice, I should just do on Instagram. So I started an account not knowing anything about social media and started posting random things. And of course, nobody saw them, nobody liked them. I had no idea what I was doing. And the really great byproduct of those early days was I was able to connect with really incredible physicians on Instagram, the early folks who were on there. And that's really what was powerful about it. Is like once we all started collaborating and working together, it was like we built a community.
Mhm.
And the funny thing, the evolution here, which is still funny to me, is that people were less interested in sort of the educational posts and more interested in my life and like,
Mm.
what's your life like? And what do you do? And what grocery do you buy? And like, what do you eat? Like, you're a doctor mom, and like just so curious about how does it all work, and what do you recommend? And so that's why my page kind of took on this slightly different direction and presence. I had initially intended for it to be just totally like just educational. And I just kept getting feedback like, no, we actually like the stuff that you post about your life and your advice and what you've experienced and some of the challenges and, the moments where you're the most real and you're telling stories about things. That's really, I think, what people find they can connect with. And I think that just goes back to like who we are as humans. We like to connect with stories. We like to hear and learn from the experiences of others. And it really, I think, builds a deeper sense of community. And so funny enough, I end up doing a lot less like medical education and just a lot more, I don't know, sharing on life topics that people might find valuable or interesting, and sometimes just entertaining. But so the entertaining stuff is just like my creative release. And I always wonder sort of about what that professional line is, because I have mentees who are applying to medical school, people who are applying for residency, and they're like, what can I share? What can I not share? What should I do? And I think some of the boundaries around that are a little bit of a gray zone. And so people hesitate to the point where they're like, okay, just to be safe, I'm not going to post anything. I'm not going to have a public presence.
Mhm.
And, I think all three of us are an example of the fact that you can have a public presence. You can be a professional. You can be taken seriously. And you can actually share things that make you vulnerable. You don't have to be this like, robotic person who has everything together, is so perfect, is unapproachable, and doesn't share anything that makes you seem weak in any way.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, and I think the culture of medicine before that kind of promoted that idea, right? So that's why people have this residual feeling with social media, at least like our generation and maybe the generations before us have this feeling. I feel that the younger generations are more brave than I am. Sometimes I'm like, wow, they just posted that. That's so incredible. I wish I could do something like they did. I'm not there yet, but I think that, like you said, Umbreen and I have also felt this community and this inspiration and this connection and learning and education from each other and across different age groups, and I think that's something that social media has allowed, and especially in the pandemic, right, to at least open those types of doors. And that leads me to, my next question for you, because you share different aspects of your life, and being a physician and a mom and an entrepreneur and doing all the projects that you do, one of the important topics right now in medicine is a work-life fit, or you hear work-life balance. And so how do you think that you create that for yourself? And how do you think that others can, advocate for themselves to create that balance?
I think it's so important to our lives to be fulfilled and to be happy and to, in a way, design a life that makes sense for you. And it really is aligned with what you have worked so hard towards. I think it's really a shame when somebody's worked their entire life to get an MD and then to get trained and then they end up in a role that really like burns them out and really like makes them unhappy. And sort of sucks the life out of them. That's the worst. That's the worst case scenario. And so in order to actually get to where you want to go, you have to understand, like, what are my priorities? And so I actually was in a place where I started a company with a couple of guys out of Uber and Google. It's called Forward. And I worked on it like a mad woman. I was working harder than I'd ever worked in my life for those 2 years. I think I worked like 70-hour weeks, and I was on call for all of my physicians. Like, I was like the backstop because I was the medical lead. I was the backstop for them, on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I had to respond at any hour of the day within 5 minutes of someone sending a message. I mean, it was just like so intense and so crazy. And I wasn't there for my family. I wasn't present. I don't even remember what happened during those 2 years, like on a personal front. Like, I look back at that time and I'm like, why didn't we send holiday cards that year? Oh, I was doing the whole startup thing. And after that experience, I sort of realized, gosh, this is not sustainable on a long-term basis. And so after that, I really like took some time. I was so burnt out. I had to take some time to actually reevaluate, what are my goals and what are my priorities and what makes me happy and what do I actually want? And that was really hard because I was so addicted to working really hard and moving really fast and feeling like I was working on something really valuable and big. And I had to start over. So after I left Forward, I stayed on as an advisor, and then I got approached by a lot of large companies to be sort of a medical lead, like chief medical officer, or a role like that. And I had to stop myself from actually like responding to those interview requests, and I let sort of the universe guide me, which sounds very weird, but I think one thing that women in medicine don't feel like they have the choice to do is to design their lives the way that they want and to do things the way that they want. And you have the opportunity to work part-time. You have the opportunity to work on multiple things at once. You have the opportunity to be part-time in clinical medicine and to be an advisor or be a legal consultant, a legal expert on cases. I mean, there's just so many things that you can do. You can write books. You can, work on something completely different in a different realm. I mean, you have options, and I think you have to actually say that out loud to realize that you do have those options. You don't have to just take a job where you're working to the bone and you're not happy and stay in that job. And so after that period of soul searching, I would call it, I sort of realized, like, hey, what I want to do is I want to start companies with really smart people, and I want to help them with their strategy. And I want to advise female founders who are building cool things in the healthcare space. And I want to invest in cool technology, and I want to work on projects. And I don't know how I'm going to make that work. I don't know how I'm going to make money doing that, but I'm going to figure it out. And guess what? I figured it out. And it seemed like this sort of, I don't know if that's possible kind of scenario, because I hadn't seen anybody do it and I didn't have any mentors who were doing it, and nobody was able to tell me how to make it work. But that's the thing about believing in yourself. When you believe in yourself and you believe in your abilities, you believe that you're capable, then everything will work out as long as you're willing to work for it, to set it up. So it did take some time for me to get to a place where I was like, okay, this makes sense. This works. And now it's really incredible because I have a lot of autonomy. I have a lot of flexibility. I can be there for my kids at pick up and drop off, and I can run to their school if something is happening, but I still have a very intellectually stimulating job, and I get to do what I want. And so it's I would say the only sacrifice that I'm making there is that I don't do as much clinical work as I would like. But after the pandemic, I really hope to get back and sort of volunteer and do more sort of clinical work. But going back to your question, I don't know if I answered your question about work-life balance. I think you just have to prioritize, and you kind of have to design your life and advocate for yourself. So when I talk to women who are sort of evaluating new job contracts and offers, they feel trapped. They feel like, oh, they're offering me this much money and these are my benefits. And like, I don't want to upset them. I don't want to sort of negotiate and ask for more. And the truth is, you need to go back and you need to ask for whatever you want. And the worst that they can say is no. And yeah, they can call you pushy or they can call you whatever they want.
Mhm.
But the truth of the matter is, if you don't advocate for yourself now, you'll be miserable in the long run. And you really want to design, like, I really believe that you need to design your career the way that you want to. And it may not be like your first job out of training, might not be the perfect fit, but if you keep advocating for yourself, you'll figure it out.
And I think, Aaliya, it's again, I mean, we can't emphasize this enough. That's why it's important to have people like you on social media. And it's, it's not about, showing what a family looks like or showing what, female looks like. It's really showing what a person in real life can do with their life, right? And this perception that people have of social media, which we all have from time to time, where we look at someone's pictures and we see, oh, that person has it all together, and you have these beautiful children, this wonderful husband, you're doing all these things, and they think, oh, she doesn't have to go through anything, she just has it all figured out. Little do they know, and that you've gone through these struggles, and you initially didn't know what you wanted to do, and things kind of just fell into place, but you really worked hard for it. And I think having platforms like this where you can discuss, like, this was my journey, this is how I got to where I got to, and not only did I do it, but it can be possible for you too. And the other thing is that I think when we've all come up in training, we didn't have that exposure, right? The only exposure we really had, maybe we had female mentors. Like, I knew I had plenty of female mentors, but they were all cardiologists just working full-time jobs, or maybe some of them were part-time, but then they were also just, at home the other part of the time, not really doing anything else with their careers. And I think later on, towards the end of my training, and now even early in my career, I'm realizing I want so much more out of life. And maybe it isn't all cardiology. Maybe I want to do something else. And seeing people like you that are able to have this work-life balance and do other things with their life other than just pure, clinical medicine, kind of inspires me to think, like, wow, like, maybe if I have an idea, or maybe if I, want to, do something more on social media, or maybe if I want to get into media in general, or maybe if I want to do something else, it's all possible. So it's incredibly valuable to have people like you on this platform, on social media, and even just talking to us to show people that it's all possible.
Well, thank you. Thank you for letting me sort of talk about my path, because it definitely wasn't a straight one. And I had some pretty dark moments, honestly, and some pretty dark times where I really felt like so confused and not sure which direction to go in. And I think it's normal. I think that's a normal part of the human process. In order to get somewhere really great, you have to be somewhere really uncomfortable for a little while. And I think people are sort of scared of that and they're resistant to that. And that's why they end up in these sort of long haul careers that aren't super fulfilling to them. But when you mentioned having mentors, it just reminded me of I had one mentor in residency, just one mentor. She was this young woman, worked super hard towards tenure, like really worked much harder than her male colleagues, and was married, had kids. And I actually reconnected with her about a year and a half ago, right before the pandemic, and was really surprised to hear her actually ask me for advice and say, hey, I like what you've done. I like how you kind of do your own thing and you figured it out. And I kind of want to do something similar, but I'm kind of scared because I've been in academics so long, and my department isn't really supporting me the way that they should. Like, I've been working so hard and nobody's really given me what I thought I would be, getting by this point after having it invested so much. And I was like, in a way, like shocked that somebody who was so senior in an academic role, somebody who I had trained under, and somebody who I at a time had kind of like admired and idolized in a way, for being this like workaholic who just was on this great academic track. To hear her say those things was really shocking to me, and also really reminded me that at the end of the day, you have to be true to yourself. You have to listen to your own intuition, your own gut, and listen to the voice inside of you, because I think there's a lot of sort of like in medicine, there's a lot of this notion of you should be doing this or you should be doing that. And that's the right decision. Um, and you really, you know, there aren't a lot of examples of people leaving that mold and doing something else. And I want people to know that there's so much out there. There's so much opportunity for physicians in every single field. And if you are at all interested, get involved, start meeting people who are working on cool things and just understand what they're working on. Even if you have no plan of being involved in it, it's really important to understand what's out there and like kind of make sure that you're not just going into a career with blinders on.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's like in medicine, and especially with women in medicine, there's this um, overhanging guilt, right? Because we want to prove something, or we feel like we need to dedicate more time and effort in order to, get what we want, or, whatever reasons there might be. But it's like breaking away from that guilt, having the courage to go out and get uncomfortable and figure out, what you actually want, and overcoming those fears, right? Because we are trained in this system of just okay, this is the path, and we've had it kind of all lined up for us, right? Like, okay, you want to go into medicine, you want to be this kind of a doctor, this is the steps you have to take. And so it's scary to be like, you know what, I actually have interest in X, Y, and Z, but how do I get there? Oh, I have to figure it out myself, right? And that's really scary. And so, like Ambreen was saying, like having people, show on social media and educate and, help others to overcome those fears and pursue their own interests, I think is so inspiring. And like you said, we're learning from each other. So it's like this ageless exchange, right? Where, I feel like so many different people of so many different ages. And like I said before, I'm inspired by like the college students, and then, your mentors are inspired by you. And so I do think it's amazing advice. It's amazing that you are doing so much and, giving so much, I think, to the next generation. And I mean, I don't know if you can tell, but obviously, like this whole conversation has been super inspiring to me because I feel like I'm gushing and just keep, overflowing with it. I think it's just so important to have role models like that. And it just shows that, as women, as physicians, no matter what age you are, that, in order to do and get what you want, like you have to believe in yourself, like you're saying. And so I just want to say thank you. Thank you for showing and sharing your journey with us here on Heart to Heart and on social media. And is there any last pearls that you would like to give our audience today?
Thank you so much for having me here. I am so inspired by you guys and all that you do, and amazed that you put on this incredible sort of show every week. Like that's incredible. Just I'm speechless that you do this sort of in your spare time for other people and to help them in their career. So that's amazing. Thank you so much. In terms of any pearls, I mean,
you've given a lot to already. I feel like we have bags of it from you already. But if you have a couple more, we can make a necklace out of it.
I mean, just like at the end of the day, follow your heart. Like if you feel like there's something you want to do, you're not sure how to do it or who to talk to or what to do, don't be discouraged by that. Actually figure it out. Google it, talk to people, network, and see if there's something there, because it's something that comes from within you and your heart. Like that's what you want to do. So don't just go on a path that isn't fulfilling to you. Like actually just design your own life.
I love that. Follow your heart. That's the best way to end this Heart to Heart episode. So Aaliya, thank you so much again for spending your evening with us. And to everyone who watched today, thank you for joining us for another Heart to Heart, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.